But once I got out of the academy, I was assigned to uniform patrol, which is where everybody goes when you leave the academy pretty much. And I policed in Buckhead I got out at the end of '07, so I was there until October of last year. I was on the morning watch. That's really fun. If you ever get a chance to do that. 10:30 at night to 6:30 in the morning, patrolling Buckhead. Yeah, that's great. But it was good to me. I really enjoyed it. I have a knack for writing traffic tickets, so I wrote a lot of traffic tickets, and I really enjoyed doing DUI. That was my thing, drunk drivers. I loved taking drunks off the street. Back when I was a kid, I sang in a band, and one of my band members' mothers was killed by a drunk driver, and that stuck with me throughout my life. And once I was a police officer, guess what I could do? I could lock you up for that, right? So that's what I did. And I actually, in 2008, it was 2008, I won the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers Award I had the most DUI arrests in the state of Georgia. I put like 255 drunks in jail that year. So that sounds like I'm tooting my horn, but it's really not hard to do it. You have to look the other way in Buckhead not to lock up that many people for driving drunk. But I went to work one day. I'm getting to where I ended up in this position. I promise. So I go to work one day, and we had a little bulletin board in the precinct, and they would leave notes, like if somebody would call if we messed up a ticket or if we didn't write a report the way we were supposed to or whatever. We'd get these little notes, you know, we'd get people calling in saying, hey, call me back. Well, I walked in and I had a note up there that said, call SPO Powell from the Chief of Staff's office. The Chief of Staff of the police department, who's my boss now, basically supervises everybody. I mean, she's like one rung under the chief. So I was a little bit nervous. You know, you get that call like, oh no, what did I do? That was me. I was thinking, who did I write a ticket to, or who did they know, or whatever. So I was getting a little nervous. But I called the number, and it was SPO Powell, who is the other LGBT liaison for the department. And she was one of my instructors when I went through the academy. And I called her, and she said, hey, Sharp, it's Powell. And I'm like, yeah, what? The first thing I said was, what did I do? And she said, oh, no. I should have told him not to put that on the board like that, because she knew what I would be thinking. But she was actually calling me to see if I could come down to headquarters and meet with her. And she wouldn't tell me why, which was a little bit strange to me. But so I said I would go. And I went down to headquarters, and I sit down with her and Major Erica Shields, who's, like I said, she's who I report directly to. She's the Chief of Staff. And they were asking me to be the second LGBT liaison for the police department, which completely shocked me because, you think of those kind of positions for police officers, when you get appointed to something by the chief and the mayor, you have to know people. And I'm thinking, I took some people, I locked up somebody from Cobb County who was a judge or something, but I don't know people I don't politic too much, so. But they said, they'd ask around the police department. Of course, Officer Powell knew me, and she knew I was openly gay, and she knew what kind of work I did in the zone. And they'd ask a few people around the department, for suggestions on who might make a good liaison. And once they got my name a couple of times, they thought I would be good for the job. So I had to really do some thinking because it's a very political position. It's a lot of media coverage. It's a lot of people digging into your life and asking personal questions and those kinds of things. And Daniel and I are very private people, so most police officers are by nature. So I came home and talked over the possibility of the position with Daniel. And to my surprise, he was like, "You're going to take it, right?" So I think we thought about it for about a week and a half. I had to seriously give it some thought before I decided to take the position. And once I said yes, it was pretty fast moving. I was promoted, I think, appointed the week or two before Pride last year. So it was full steam ahead. The minute the ink was on the paper and I was in the position, it was go, go, go. So, but like I said, one of the first things that I did when I got to the position was start writing the lesson plan that we teach now. Pat and I are teaching 4 days a week at the academy. And it's about an hour-long lesson plan that we teach. It's just a little bit about the history of the LGBT community. It goes into, from the history, it goes into our policy. We have a liaison policy. And I put the policy in there because that's what we live by as police officers, is our policies. And we were having some issues with getting complaints on officers in the community, and I think it was just a fact of ignorance, and they didn't know what the policies were. So I make sure they're educated when they leave my class. And then we go into a lot of commonly used terms and definitions. We spend a lot of time there because they just don't know. I say some things in class and they're just like, wow, they've never heard it. So, and then we close out the lesson plan with a little bit of just what can I do as a police officer to interact with the community and leave that encounter and leave that person better than the way I found them, is basically what it ends up being. So we've been doing that. We started back in February, mid-February we started. All the civilian employees, we have 300 or 400 civilian employees that work for the police department, and we have about 1,700 to 1,800 sworn officers. So we got all the civilians out of the way. They're done, thank goodness. And we're still working on the police officers. We're going to be going through the first or second week of May with the training. So, and that's pretty much what we do right now, 4 days a week, in addition to coming out and doing speaking engagements. And we have another event that we're going to tonight. We have an LGBT advisory group. Did y'all know about them? We have a 9-member advisory group that were hand-selected by the mayor's office. They're community leaders and folks from the community that sit on a group, like I said, of 9 people, and they meet with us monthly, and the meetings are open to the public. So, and they address issues like the Eagle Raid has been a huge thing for the past 2 years now. But they also work with the ACRB, the Citizens Review Board for Atlanta. They work with them also in dealing with issues with the community. But that's pretty much in a nutshell what I do. And like I said, I like to talk with people, so I hope y'all have questions. That's what I'm used to, is question and answer sessions. So I know I covered a pretty good bit, but if y'all have any questions, feel free to ask. Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say, Brian, that I felt like, as you were talking, that you had been a mom like I am a mom. And especially when you said, I told my mom I am gay, those 3 words, and I was there, but she wasn't there yet. That just resonated with me. Thank you.
That's one thing that I think a lot of us don't realize, and I know I've heard you and some of the other parents talk about how different it is on our journey. At 16, I had known, I think back and I can't remember a time that I did not know that I was different and that I did not know I was attracted to other boys and that I wasn't like everybody else. When we were playing in the neighborhood and everybody wanted to be Spider-Man and Superman, I was Wonder Woman. So that's normally not what everybody looks for in a little boy. So I knew I was different. But, you know, it took me a while to get to that point. And when I told my mom, I expected her to be there that day. And I'm just...
Thank you. What kinds of questions have you received that have surprised you from your attendees in your classes? Any particular things that stand out?
I think just maybe not questions, but reactions would be more of what I was surprised at, because I just assumed that everybody who works and lives and especially polices in a place like Atlanta, and I always say in class, we don't police in Podunk, Alabama, okay? I can say that because I have family in Alabama. We don't police in Podunk, Alabama. You police in a metro area that's 5 million plus with probably the second or third largest population of LGBTQ people. So why do you have a problem with dealing with that type? You know, if you have issues with that and it conflicts with you personally or whatever, I can understand that. But as a police officer, you can't, I mean, if you want to deal with that, go somewhere where there's a population of 200, you know, because I guarantee you're going to have to deal with it here. And I think when it comes to transgendered individuals, that's probably where we have the biggest disconnect with people's understanding. They just don't get it. Daniel helped me, it's been about a month ago now, about 3 weeks ago. We did a special training. Y'all know what Red Dog is? Have y'all heard about the Red Dog unit? They were one of the groups that were involved in the Eagle Raid. They were specialized, like paramilitary, street level, intensive crime, low-level drug type of unit. Well, they were disbanded about 2 months ago. And in their place is a new unit they're calling Apex. And what we wanted to do with them, in addition to our LGBT training that we do, that Officer Powell and I do, we wanted to give them specific training for dealing with transgendered individuals. So Daniel helped me put that together, along with, we had a couple of folks from Someone Cares Atlanta, if y'all are familiar with them, and Tracy McDaniel, one of our advisory group members, who is a transgendered male to female individual, came in and helped us do, they did like an additional hour and a half or 2 hour block of training that was just specific to the transgender community. Because people just don't know. You know, and we encounter transgendered individuals all the time on traffic stops and just walking down the street in different ways. And I'm teaching them the basics. Anybody who leaves my class, I tell them, you're not going to leave an expert. I'm not an expert, so you're certainly not going to be after an hour. But what we try to do is just teach basic respect. If you deal with somebody who's presenting as a female, address them as such. And if they don't want to be called that, then they're going to let you know. Because I've had situations where I pulled over what I thought was a transgender person that wasn't. And they said, no, my name's Joe. I just dress like this for fun. This is my girlfriend. We came from a party. You know, okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, sir. Yeah. Here, follow my finger. But at the same time, I have pulled over a transgender male to female and said, ma'am, do you know why I stopped you? And she said, no, I don't have a clue. And at that point, nobody freaked out. You know, I went on with my traffic stop. I wrote the ticket, and everything's fine. So that's what we try to teach the officers. You know, take the gender and take the gender identity and take all that out of it and just treat people like people. That's all we ask them to do. Yes, sir.
I've several years had some experience feeding the homeless with this organization called Food Not Bombs. And as you may well know, they've had sort of an ongoing contretemps with the police department over feeding people in the parks. And one of the things I observed was that when we started off and a new cop came on the beat, he'd be real surly and kind of straight out of Paris Island kind of guy, you know, just ordering people around and stuff, and we'd have to show him the court papers and everything. But after he'd been there, say 2 months, you know, coming out every week as we did every week, he softened up a whole lot, and suddenly he became kind of empathetic with the people who, you know, with the down and out and everything. And I'm wondering if you observe the same kind of process in the case-hardened officers who start out thinking gays are just, you know, people that crawl out from under rocks, and as they get to know them, they become much more empathetic and reasonable.
Yes, that happens across the board with new recruits that come out of the academy. They've just went